Life Audio.
The Bible Study Podcast, episode 966. Today, the Bible Study Podcast continues a study of the book of Exodus, continuing on from chapter 2. Welcome to the Bible Study Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. We're going to continue on with Moses' story, talking about Moses as an adult, but first a word from this sponsor.
I'm Kirby Kelly, and in my new book, The Fabric of Hope, I want to walk you through seasons of suffering, uncertainty, and waiting, and remind you of this truth. God is never absent, and He is never far away. When life unravels, hope can feel impossible or out of reach. Maybe today you're feeling like things are falling apart, and you're wondering if you can trust God's good plans for your life. But what if, even here, God is still working to create something beautiful? Through honest stories and encouragement, The Fabric of Hope invites you to see your story through a new lens, one where your hard seasons have purpose and your waiting isn't empty. If you're longing for hope that will never unravel no matter what comes your way, The Fabric of Hope is for you. Find it wherever books are sold.
So we're going to pick this up in verse 11 of chapter 2. Moses flees to Midian. So his childhood is over and Moses is now grown up. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Reuel their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Reuel asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. So Moses grows up, remember, in Pharaoh's household. And so when he goes out to see where his own people were, and watch them at their hard labor, he is not taking part in that. He hasn't had to do that. But he knows that he is a Hebrew. He would have been told that by people around him. And so he is going out to see how his people are getting treated and sees one being mistreated and kills him, which is not great. I remember when I was doing chaplain ministry to youth in juvenile hall, and I mentioned in a sermon at my church 3 people that were murderers that I wanted to introduce my kids to, and the 3 of them were Moses and King David and Saul, also known as Paul, because all 3 of them were murderers. Now, we're not encouraging people to do that, but the surprising thing is that even after that terrible act, later on, God is able to use them. God is able to forgive and use these people. And that was something that I thought would bring hope to the people who I was teaching in juvenile hall, because it was a lockdown unit for violent youth offenders. And some of them were, in fact, murderers. So it is interesting to see that Moses his story doesn't end here. It doesn't end in the desert as a shepherd, although he certainly probably thinks it will at this point. In this beginning of this section, he is an Egyptian. Remember, that's what his soon wife calls him. She and her sisters who have him intervene with them. But he is, in their minds, an Egyptian. He probably dresses like an Egyptian. He talks like an Egyptian. He grew up in Pharaoh's house, although now he is a fugitive. He is fleeing Pharaoh because Pharaoh is going to have him executed. It says Pharaoh wants to have him killed. When a leader does that, we call it an execution, and in this case, it would have been justified. With the Egyptian law, that's what Moses deserves. So he goes out into the desert. He finds this priest of Midian who has 7 daughters. He helps them, drives away the shepherd, and they take him in. And he becomes a son-in-law and a husband and a brother-in-law to this group of people in the desert. He becomes a father to Gershom, which is a name that sounds like a foreigner there. And so this is where he lives now. He's a shepherd. But there's other things going on. The king of Egypt is dying, the Pharaoh is dying, and God is hearing his people cry out, and God is not done with them yet either. So this story is not over. Let's continue on to Moses and the burning bush. Chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place that you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. And I'm going to pause there for a second. You would think from the way this appears in the book of Exodus that this happens the next day or the next week or a couple months from now or something like this. This is years later. Moses at this point is a shepherd, and he's been a shepherd for most of his life. And he is at this point an old man. So it's taken a while to get to this point where he's walking along and he sees a bush that is burning but isn't burning up, and a voice speaking to him out of that bush. And it continues, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask, What is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, I am sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. This is not the end of this conversation, but we're going to pause here for this particular episode and look at what's going on here. So Moses is given a command. God is ready at this point to bring the people, the Israelites, out of Egypt and bring them into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. It doesn't say in this section why them, why is God giving their land to the Israelites, but we'll learn more about that later. But this cry has gone out, God has heard it, and the person he's going to use to do this is Moses. Now, Moses will have some thoughts on that, which we'll talk about next week. But Moses' first question is a good question, is who should I say is sending me? And we get this very famous phrase, I am who I am. And so God is known as the great I am. God who is, who was, and who is to come, who is outside of time, the great I am. This is the name that the Jews still use and that we still use sometimes to call God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the great I am. And that's who is sending Moses. And God tells him at this point, you're going to go to the elders, they're going to listen to you, you're going to go to Pharaoh, you're not going to ask to get out of Egypt. You're going to ask to journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices. You're going to be rejected. I'm going to compel him. I'm going to perform wonders. And then he will let you go. And not only will he let you go, but you're going to actually plunder the people of Egypt. They're going to give you gold and silver and clothes because they're going to be glad to see the backside of you. All of that will happen, but we'll see how as we continue this story next week. And with that, we're going to end this episode of the Bible Study Podcast. If you have any questions, send an email to chris2x@gmail.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at thebiblestudypodcast.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Hey there, it's Nicole Eunice from the How to Study the Bible podcast, and I'd love to invite you to join us as we weekly discover a passage of God's Word together. From beginning to end, from principles to practicals, we are here to make sure that God's Word is powerful and relevant to your life. If that sounds like something you're looking for, I would love to invite you to subscribe. You can go to lifeaudio.com and search How to Study the Bible, and we'll see you there.
I'm Mark Vinette, host of the Historical Jesus podcast, which presents the new series, Miracles, focusing on biblical miracles from the Old and New Testament. Join me on the Historical Jesus podcast as I explore the interesting, compelling, intriguing, and wonderful miracle stories of the Bible and the many great miraculous events inspired by the words and deeds of Jesus Christ.